There was a point when my days became so predictable that I stopped noticing them. Wake up, prepare, leave, return, repeat. The rhythm felt steady, even comforting. I told myself that was what a good life looked like: consistency, reliability, motion. It wasn't until much later, when the routine finally broke, that I realized how much had quietly passed through my hands without ever stopping there. The realization didn't arrive with drama. No sudden collapse. No argument. Just a simple thought that settled in one morning while I was looking back instead of forward. My work had shaped me more than my relationships ever did. That idea surprised me. Not because I didn't value work, I always had, but because I had assumed the people in my life were absorbing just as much of me as my job had. When I looked honestly, I wasn't sure that was true. I grew up believing a man was defined by what he could provide. You showed love by showing up every day, by doing what was required even when you were tired. Loyalty mattered. Endurance mattered. You didn't talk much about feelings because feelings didn't pay the bills or keep the lights on. Sacrifice was the measure of character, and the more you gave up, the more honorable you believed yourself to be. I didn't question that framework. It was already in me before I had words for it. So when adulthood arrived, I stepped into it naturally. I worked hard. I stayed late. I took pride in being dependable. I believed that if I carried the weight quietly, everyone else would feel lighter because of it. That belief carried me a long way. The years didn't feel like years at the time. They felt like long days strung together. Early mornings. Evenings that ended with exhaustion instead of conversation. Weekends spent catching up on what I'd missed during the week. I was always just behind, always promising myself I'd slow down once things stabilized. But things rarely stabilize the way you imagine they will. Moments slipped by without announcing themselves as important. School events I attended halfway, distracted by thoughts of what waited the next morning. Family dinners where my mind stayed at work long after my body came home. Conversations where I listened, but not deeply, because I was already thinking ahead. I wasn't absent in the obvious sense. I was there. I provided. I kept things moving. But presence is more than location, and I didn't understand that until much later. I watched my children grow the way you watch scenery from a moving vehicle. I could describe the general shape of it, but I missed the details. I noticed milestones, but not always the small changes that led up to them. They became older, more independent, more themselves, often without me realizing exactly when it happened. My marriage continued too. Steady, functional, loyal. We shared responsibilities, schedules, expectations. We didn't fall apart. But looking back, I can see how often we spoke about logistics instead of life. How often exhaustion replaced curiosity. How many times silence stood in for closeness because silence felt easier. I don't blame anyone for that. This isn't about fault. It's about choice. Repeated choices made so automatically they stopped feeling like choices at all. I tell myself I did what I thought was right. And that's true. But another truth sits beside it now. Doing what feels right doesn't always mean doing what matters most. Sometimes it just means doing what's familiar. I've asked myself questions I never thought I'd need to ask. Was sacrifice love, or was it simply the language I knew best? Did the people I cared for need more security, or more of me? At what point does responsibility become a place to hide, a way to avoid the harder work of being emotionally present? Those questions don't accuse me. They don't absolve me either. They just exist. Retirement brought a quiet I wasn't prepared for. No alarms. No deadlines. No sense of urgency pulling me out of bed. At first, it felt like relief. Then it felt like space, too much of it. The days stretched out, unmarked, and I found myself filling them with memory instead of motion. That's when the weight of things I hadn't noticed began to show themselves. Not regrets exactly. More like realizations. A sense that I had traded something valuable for something necessary, and never fully examined the exchange rate. I don't know if I would have chosen differently if I'd known how it would feel to stand here now. That's the hardest part. I can see both sides clearly, and they don't cancel each other out. The work mattered. The responsibility mattered. And yet, something else mattered too, and it didn't receive the same attention. I don't sit with bitterness. I don't believe my life was wasted. But I do sit with quiet questions that arrive more often now that there's nothing left to distract me from them. If I had understood earlier what I understand now, would I have rearranged my priorities? Would I have worked less, listened more, lingered longer in moments that felt unproductive at the time? I can't answer that honestly without acknowledging how deeply those old values were woven into me. Still, the question remains, gentle but persistent, and I offer it without judgment to anyone listening who may recognize themselves in these words. If you were given the chance to choose again, knowing what the years would cost you, would you make the same trade-offs, or would you decide that time, once spent, is the one thing work can never truly repay?